Hello, today's brief tutorial is how to use the pen tool in Adobe Illustrator. It's going to be very brief because it is one of the more complicated tools to use. First of all, to find the pen tool, the easiest thing is to press the letter P. It gets you to the toolbar quickly. Whenever I make my projects, I like to turn on the grid by pressing Command apostrophe. I also like to have the ruler, which is Command R. So now I've got the pen tool selected. And what this tool does is it draws lines just like a pen would, and the icon is an old-fashioned pen nib that you would dip into some kind of ink. I'm going to show you several ways to use it. First of all, if we're going to draw, you have to be aware of what's happening here. I'm going to spin the cursor. What happens here in the fill? Right now, I have the pen tool operating where it has a stroke or an outline, but it's not going to fill it. I think if you start using this tool, what's going to happen is by default, it's going to be filling it. So I'm going to give it a fill just to show you how confusing that can be. So we'll start off just by clicking, and I have released the click. And so when I click another one, I get a straight line in between it, and I release the click again, and I get a straight line in it. And now you see this funny triangle appear. We'll see what that is in just a minute. I'm going to make another line and another line, and now I have a very crazy looking thing. What is this really? I remember when I was starting to use this pen tool, I never understood what it was I was looking at. What the computer is trying to do is fill in the space with this black color. It's thinking you're going to make a square or a circle or a hexagon, and it wants to have the interior filled with some color. When you're clicking the pen tool and you're going back and forth, it ends up making a confusing jumble, usually of triangles like this, but you can get some other oddball shapes. So to make it easier to understand what exactly you've done, I'm going to go over here and I am going to turn off the fill. And now you see what we've done. I've just gone back and forth 1, 2, 3, 4 segments. So I'm going to click another one and another one, always a straight line, and click another one. And what I'm going to do now is close the shape. You can see that right here. As I return to the original point, you can see a very, very small circle appear next to the pen tool icon. And that means that the very next click will go and reach the origin, and it will create a closed shape. So now, if I give it a fill, it's going to be inside the outlined area. Now at this point, you can modify it to remove the black outline or do whatever it is that you want to do. So that's called a closed shape. If you're using the pen tool and you don't close the shape, see, there's that fill again. I'm going to turn off my fill. If I don't close the shape, then I end up with something like that. It's not a full shape. And if you think it is and you go to do some manipulations later on in your project, this can often create some kind of headache when it doesn't behave the same way a full, completed, closed shape does. If you end up finding you've got one of these, one of the solutions you can use is to select it. First of all, let me remind you, you can try to go back and start another pen tool and click here and click there. I've never had that work for me. There may be some way, but it never works for me. So I go and I select it with the selection tool, and then I use the Pathfinder tool palette. If you don't have Pathfinder, you have to go here under Window and down to Pathfinder and click it. And it has one little feature that I found can help. If you click on there are 3 tabs. If you click on the Pathfinder tab, here in the first one, there is the shape mode called Unite. And when you click that, it fills it in, and then it behaves like a complete shape. So those are some of the straight line methods of using the pen tool. Now I'm going to show you what else can happen when you use it. I'm going to turn off the fill because it's kind of a confusion. And something I do sometimes is turn on the stroke so that I can see my line. So I'm going to click, and then when I move to the next point, I'm going to click, but I am not going to release the mouse. I'm going to click it, and now I'm going to hold it, and you can see what you get now is a curve, and you get what are called the handles. That's the technical term. So if you're searching on Google, you can always ask about the handles in in Illustrator using the pen tool. So when I release now, I still have both of the handles. If I want the next line to be straight, I have to delete one, and I do that by going back to the point before I've clicked again. You can see a small V or arrow, and that's called converting the anchor point. And when I click on the point, it deletes that anchor. That means the next line will be straight. And now if I don't drag the mouse after I click, they'll all continue to be straight. So now I'm going to click again, and I'm going to pull, and I've got my handle, and that means I'm going to get a curve. I can delete this anchor point, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to pull, and I'm going to get another curve. And I'm going to delete that, and if I click, I'm going to show you what happens. Sometimes you can get this backwards. Think in order to fix this, if you have a funky looking kind of loop, in order to fix this, the way to try repair it is to just try and rotate the mouse in a clockwise way. You can see you'll eventually get, you could also go counterclockwise, but if you seem to run it back and forth, you just tend to have more of a mess. So just take the handle, rotate in a clockwise way until you see more of what you want. As you lengthen the handle, you lengthen the curve, and as you shorten the handle, you shorten the curve. So you could use something like this in order to make a flower. So now I'm going to convert that anchor point again. I'll return to the original point. It shows the small 0. And then when I click, I have not yet let off. I could pull this out and end up with this shape right here is completely closed. I've just turned the stroke red. If I want to give it a fill, then I can do that. So you may have an idea to create things that are using both straight and curved lines. If that's the case, you can switch back and forth between them like I just was. You'd get your pen tool, you would click, and you would release the mouse, and you could click, and you could release the mouse. Now I'm going to turn off my fill because I find that to be confusing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over, I'm going to click, but I'm not going to release the mouse. I'm going to drag it, and I get this small little curve shape here. I will go back to the point, and I convert that anchor point. One of the handles is dropped away. So the next line will be a straight one, and then the next line will be a straight one because I let off. And now I'm going to make it curved again. I'm going to make a 4. It's going to look like a cross of some sort. I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag out, and then I need to convert the anchor point by clicking on it, and I click again, and now I'm going to again make the curve by clicking and dragging out the mouse. I have 2 handles. I don't want that. I want the next line to be straight. And so I click. Now I'm on my last one. I go back to the original and I click and I drag out. Now I'm going to give that a fill, and that is what I've ended up with. So what you can do if you want accuracy, you can turn on the snap to grid, and it will make the pen tool follow the grid if you're interested in making a very precise shape using the geometry of the grid. And it won't let you click a point anywhere outside the grid. So I'm going to make the same thing, this time all straight. I'll make the cross. And here's where the difficulty is: when you have your fill turned on, you can't see exactly where you might want to click. That's one reason I like to turn it off and just use the outlines. So now I've got that. I can add a fill. Another thing you could do is, if you have some kind of irregular shape, you can do that with the pen tool and the snap to grid. If I want to make an arrow, I get my pen tool and I will click here and here and here and here. Using the grid, I can get a absolutely symmetrical, perfect arrow that will be fixed on all the points of the grid. I could do something similar by using the grid. I'll make a point. This is going to be the center line. I'll go up 2 and over 1, and then I'll go up 3 and over 1, and over 1 and down 3. So again, I'm making asymmetrical. It looks like it's filled, but I have to return to the origin. So I could create something like that. The pen tool is perfect when you have a shape in mind that is not actually part of any of the shape making tools here in the Illustrator tool set. It allows you to make a custom shape, and using the view and the snap to grid, it allows you to place the points perfectly on the grid so you can count out spaces and make them exactly like you want. So use this kind of thing. It takes a lot of practice in order to get the curves right. It takes a lot less practice to click in the straight lines. So in order to use the curves, do expect a lot of frustration when the handles don't behave exactly like you want. Thank you for watching.